Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime King. And today I'm going to be giving you part 10 of What If Naruto Was a Legendary Neglected Uzumaki. Remember to get this one to 100 like as usual. Share this to all of your friends in your social media platform. And also guys, stay in tune for the rest of the What Ifs coming your way over on Anime King 2 and Anime King 3. If you're new, yes, you heard that correctly, you are not mistaken. I indeed have 3 channels, Anime King 2, Anime King 3, which I post What If on every single day for you guys to enjoy. So go ahead and click that red subscribe button and become part of the Anime King family. And thank you for all of your help and support. Remember to comment down below and tell me if you're new. I'll be planning talking back to all of you. So yeah, without further ado, what is to begin this new episode? Start the intro. So the last time we left off, Natsu told Minato everything that happened out there. And to Natsu's view, he blamed Naruto. But he realized something as well. He didn't do anything. He was so petrified in fear that he didn't do anything. The time passed as Naruto almost killed himself. Mixing fire and water together, he nearly blew his entire arms off. As he woke up in the hospital, as Kurenai asked him why he was trying to kill himself. But he wasn't trying to kill himself, he was just frustrated. People, Natsu in particular, seemed to think that it was his fault, and he was putting him on edge. As Yoshino then came inside, as she looked quite pale, she was the one that healed his arms, to make sure that he wouldn't have any everlasting damage. As she warned him, as she put down a few laws on the matter, seeing that he did something so stupid. Something that rather pissed off Naruto about him becoming clan head at 18 no matter what. Despite if he got Jonin status, and it made him quite angry at that. But he didn't have to put up with it for too long because he was leaving the village soon enough. Him and his father made their way towards Kumo. There was no malice or hatred from the people. After all, the secret cover mission from Mikado. No one really knew about that, it seems. Because people didn't look towards him with hatred, as Minato was put up in one of the best hotels there. And Naruto went to take part in the exam. As everyone thought that Naruto was, well, easy picking seeing that he was just alone. As a boy tried to dominate over Naruto, as Naruto set him aflame. The Raikage seemed to even shrug it off, not really caring about the boy that was on the ground in pain after the flames died down. As they were told about the exam, the flag that they were supposed to get, as Naruto made his way, he was instantly caught up by Yujito and her team, as Naruto made him a deal, and he also made her a deal as well. To give her his father jutsu if she was able to beat him. And she lost, he wanted to go on a date with her. She was quite surprised by that. But she had confidence in her skills, but he must have confidence in his own to bet something like that. As he gave her the Harashin coin that he had, as a gesture of good faith. As she accepted the deal as he tagged along with them, until he made his way. When Naruto arrived, he was stopped by a large group there waiting for him as he already got his flag. Someone spread the rumor that he had more than one, as the group stopped him right at the gate, so he couldn't pass. As Naruto ran straight towards them, he leaped over their head, quite fast, passing them, as they were calling him a chicken. They called him a chicken when they gang up on him, 12 to 1. He didn't care though, as the proctor gave him the pass. Later that day, Naruto made his way back to the hotel, as Minato asked him what the hell he did. But Naruto told him that it's not his jutsu to give after all. And by the way, Kumo has been dishonest a lot of time in the past, so why would he choose to be honest with them now? As Minato told him that was wrong to lie, but it was not Naruto just to give after all. As Naruto told him to blame Fukaku, Yujito had went to the office as she had the Harashin kunai. As she debated whether to tell the Raikage about it, yes or no. So yeah guys, so basically that's what I thought. You guys can switch across to please check it for yourself. So this to begin this new episode. What happens if you win the bet? Minato asks curiously. As Naruto stood up smiling at his father, Yujito goes on a date with me, he said. Huh? Said Minato as he looked towards Naruto. You mean to tell me you bet the Hiroshin on a date? A date? Are you out of your mind, Naruto? Naruto simply shrugged. She's worth it. Minato sighed. I really should be freaking out about this, but my confidence in you eased my worries. But if you have to use S-rank jutsu, you will have to, do you understand? There will be no need to expose everything, said Naruto with a smile. Let us make a deal, father. You know when you smile like that, I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil, said Minato. No, I'm not making a deal with you. Disappointed, said Naruto, as he shook his head. Fine, I'm heading out. Why don't we go together? The Raikage won't discuss anything else with me, other than Chunin exams. I thought I would get a chance to talk about the relationship between our village. But he doesn't seem interested, said Minato with a frown. That reminds me, said Naruto. Kumo, I probably know that I killed that man. As Naruto walked towards the exit with his father right behind him. Time skip. The next morning, the fourth Raikage looked around the contestants. There were supposed to be 12, but he only saw 11 of them. He would not complain if they were less, but he couldn't cut them at this number, as he could clearly see the one contestant that wasn't there. They were all supposed to be present at 8, and now it was close to 8:30. The spectators have already gathered in the stadium. As he turned towards the man in his right hand. Do you know where the missing finalist is? Probably. Still at the hotel, the man said calmly. Should I go and call him? Leave him be, the Raikage said. I won't bother telling you why Chunin exams are held like this. As he nodded to the proctor before walking away, the proctor turned. I am Dodi, the proctor for the finals. The reason you were not told about your opponent yesterday because in the shinobi world, you will not always know who you will be facing. As a shinobi, you must be able to think on your feet and be ready for anything. In these exams, we won't be accessing your skills only, but we will test and see how you adapt to unexpected surprises while fighting your opponent that you know nothing about. Having said that, you don't have to win the finals, but you just have to show that you're skilled enough to become a Chunin, and you possess the right mindset to do it. It isn't just skills that make you a Chunin, but the mind as well. Becoming a Chunin means that you might end up leading a team, and you must be able to lead those under you. At that moment, Naruto walked inside the room, hands in his pockets, as his eyes were closed as he leaned up against the wall. You were told that your secondary flag would determine your first round opponent. Though they continue on, but in some cases, there will be an exception to that rule. There are cases which you have been exempted from the rule. The first round will have 4 matches. Wait, 4 matches? But there are 12 of us. Shouldn't there be 6 matches? It wouldn't do, though they said. There should have been just 8 or 16 of you to make it possible to draw the matches. The first round will have 3 contestants battling each other. The winner of each round will move towards the semi-final. We have already drawn up each round, the man says. He points at a board behind him. This will be how it is. Prepare yourself. Once time comes, you will be called. As Naruto looked at the board, he was pitted against a stone shinobi. Well, that was to be expected. He did take the flag of a stone genin. He wasn't going to complain about that. But the fact that his route to the finals circled around Kumo Jinjuriki Yujito, well, it was probably set up like that, after all. The most of the people here were Kumo people, and they would love to see their own take center stage. If he lost the match, the 2 genins would face each other. 2 Kumo genins in the last, so it didn't matter which one of them win. Kumo will still be on top. Talk about a fixed drawing board. Meanwhile, like Kage's boot. I'm surprised you bothered to show your face to my village, even after you just sent weaklings to the exam. Tishikage, the 4th Raikage said, sitting in the center, between the 4th Hokage and the 3rd Tishikage. Oniki turned towards Raikage for a moment, before looking away, but he was rather amazed that Minato could be so calm when he was surrounded by enemies. It was a well-known fact that he didn't get along with Kumo, or the stone even worse, and yet he was just so calm and perfectly fine. If anything, it made Oniki curse him for his confidence. If anything, this was a perfect chance to get rid of him and his brat. He turned his eyes towards the spectators. This is the best that my village could offer, he said. You can't disagree if you know something I don't. Before the Raikage could say anything, Oniki spoke once again. It is nothing more insulting than what he has done. I call it an insult to send one simple genin to fight up against all other candidates. Are you simply saying that your son is enough against everyone else? Minato merely smiled if he wins. Will there be a need for me to answer the question? The Raikage scoffed at Naruto's chance of winning. He cannot and will not win, the Raikage said. I heard that he's also made an interesting bet with Yujito. Minato simply laughed. Yes, he told me about it. I have to admit, I was rather shocked myself. I propose that we make a wager, the Raikage said. What assurances that you have to give me that you will stick with it? I remember. What you still try to do, said Minato, his tone rather calm. Ace simply shrugged. I think of the past. If Yujito win the final match, no matter what happened, Konoha and Kumo will not go to war with each other. And even if you go to war with Hidden Stone, we will not participate. But this will only be applicable for the next 5 years. Minato narrowed his eyes. I didn't think that you would do something to avoid war with Konoha. Your recent actions have done nothing but provoke us into actions. Had it not been me who was Hokage, Konoha would have surely attacked this village. Oniki snorted, unlikely. The leaf has become nothing more than a shell of its former self. You appear like you fear war. Are you afraid that war will knock you down from your glorious seat? Minato shook his head. I have not forgotten, he said. His tone, his posture still completely calm. We have our reason for doing things the way we are doing them. You don't need to understand them, but those who have wronged us will eventually face us. As Oniki seemed to muse over that for a moment. I didn't take you for that kind of a person, he said. That kind of person? You misunderstood me, said Minato. What you must understand, I have not spoken of retribution or vengeance. I merely said who wronged us will have to face us. For what reason, I did not specify. Konoha does not fear anything. It has never feared anyone, and it never will. Anyone thinking that we choose not to ignite the flames of war because we have become weak is rather delusional. He then paused. He turned his attention back to the Raikage. Then he said, I have my reason, Ace said, after hearing that speech from Minato. You don't need to know them. I see, said Minato. I will agree to the wager if you agree that you will no longer attempt what you tried with the Hyuga, and you will travel to the village or send someone to offer apologies and compensate for the grief that you have caused. That's a little too much. Minato simply shrugged. Considering that you are the ones that gave us every reason to fight you, I say, me even agreeing to your terms is generous on my part. But if you think your Genin cannot win, then we can skip this at the wager. As Ace spoke rather quickly. That will be done, he said. Excellent, said Minato. But if you do anything traitorous or go back on your words, Yujito will be taken by Konoha, either by force or free will, any acceptable method. After the exams, I will let the feudal lord know. The Tishikage is a witness. The Raikage was not planning on anything dangerous with Konoha, and for the 5 years he thought that Minato would just keep his distance, and he could use that time to build its military force. Shall we shake on it, he said. Meanwhile, in the arena, the first match was Naruto versus two Genins from the Hidden Stone. In his eyes, they were pathetic and weak. It seemed that the Hidden Stone decided to send weak Genins into the exam, just to have their presence in the village. It seems that they didn't want to show off. They wanted to keep all their cards and their surprise to themselves. Oh well, it couldn't be helped. Since the opponents were weak, Naruto wasn't going to waste time with them. He was going to crush them because he didn't have a reason to be cautious with them. They could not threaten him or his glory, seeking hands. Contestant ready? The proctor asked as the Genins nodded. Begin, he said. As Naruto wasn't surprised, they came at him like it was 2-on-1. It was okay, he knew they would do something like that. They were from the same village and he was enemy to them. The first one tried to punch him directly in the face, while the other one went towards his left, trying to punch him at the side of the head. He caught the first punch and moved slightly, dodging the second one. As Naruto pulled the hand that he was holding onto, a snapping sound could be heard, followed by a cry of pain. As Naruto had stomped right into the Genin's leg. With his bone snapping, causing the leg to bend, the Genin cried out in pain as Naruto pushed him to the side. Without wasting time, he flashed away as he appeared behind the other one, as swinging high foot crashed into the Genin's temple. The kick knocked the Genin into his teammate, knocking the both of them into the wall of the arena. And there was silence. The match was over. Naruto refused to smile. He refused to be happy because he didn't call this a victory. Those were just two weak, pathetic Genins. The proctor stepped up, seeing that they could no longer continue, not to mention one of them had their legs broken. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. The other matches came and went. Yujito teared through all of her opponents as she made it towards the semi-finals. The other final was against Naruto and another blonde Genin from Kumo. As Naruto tilted his head to the side, Kumo certainly had some interesting blondes. This Samui was Yujito's teammate. Why didn't he notice her back then? Was it because he was told that Yujito was the strongest? And being his old ignorant self, he ignored her and just focused on Yujito. As he smiled at the blonde, if there was a choice, I would rather not have to fight such a beautiful girl. Samui just looked at him, not seemingly impressed, as she unsheathed her sword. Shall we? Cold, said Naruto as he pulled out his blade. As he waited for her to make the first move. It was his policy to allow the opponent he didn't know anything about to make the first move. Samui just watched him for a few moments. He didn't look like he was going to attack her at all. He had even taken a defensive stance. He was inviting her to attack him. It didn't matter anyway, she won her first match. She just had to give it her all in this match and fight using her head as well. It will be enough to earn her promotion. She calmed herself before she dashed towards the red head. She halted her movements right in front of him and swung her sword downwards. As Naruto used his right hand to block the blade, holding onto his own blade in his right hand. As he used physical strength to push her back. Even though he pushed her back, he did not attack. He just watched her. She obviously saw it. He wasn't looking at her. He was calculating everything, whether to do or not. She was forced to do the attacking once again as she rushed towards him, the tip of her blade hitting the ground. When she came up, she brought up sand as well. She sent the sand towards his face as Naruto jumped back, so he wouldn't be temporarily blinded. The moment Naruto landed, she appeared behind him as she swung her blade, trying to cut through his body. But Naruto jumped up, flipping over her head. But she spun around as he was flipping, her sword cleaving through the air. As Naruto brought down his own sword, clash! The two blades clashed together. With his defense holding firm, Naruto swung his right foot straight towards her. She reacted quickly by jumping back. She pushed back forward as she sliced at him. As Naruto simply pushed back as his sword ripped through the air where he was. As he landed calmly on his feet, the moment her sword hit the ground, bam! Naruto's feet slammed in her forehead. As he moved with brilliant speed, as she was sent sailing backwards. She flipped several times in mid-air as she landed in a kneeling position. As Naruto was upon her in seconds, his right foot traveling towards her forehead once again. It was instantaneous, but she was able to slam an explosive on his foot right when it hit her in the forehead. The kick sent her flying as she crashed into the arena, slamming her back against the wall, but she kept her eyes focused on Naruto. As Naruto saw the attack that was going to set off, that was going to take his feet as well. As Naruto threw his blade up and created a clone without performing any hand sign. Boom! The explosion went off. The spectators are on the edge of their seats, waiting for the fiery explosion to die down. There was only one Naruto that was blasted away. He didn't look harmed, just a few tears on his clothing. The crowd roared, as it was remarkable that he was able to get out of the explosion alive without any physical damage. As Naruto straightened himself up as he walked towards the center of the arena and picked up his blade. As he kneeled down to pick it up, Samui left foot stomped on the blade, while her right foot whipped through the air to slam into his face. Naruto pushed Chakra in his hand and reached out and grabbed her leg. As Naruto held onto her leg, his eyes closed as he smiled. For a moment, I thought you were trying to kill me. If I hadn't been able to replace myself with a clone in a split second, the explosive tag going off, there would be a lot of damage. She looked at him, unnerved by his smile. What if I was, she said. Well, I would have tried to kill you as well, said Naruto. You're fast, but you're just not fast enough. I have not looked at your taijutsu skills, but I think you're holding out on me. Either way, we must end this before it becomes dangerous for me, he said. The first thought that popped in her mind was making some distance between them. He was speaking dangerously, and he was speaking like he could take her down. But as she tried to pull her right foot, he was not budging. She raised her other feet as she brought up towards his left shoulder, but he simply pushed her other feet away that he was holding onto, making her lose her balance. As he kicked his sword on the ground, it flipped as he caught it in his palm. She brought up her own blade as Naruto moved. As he slammed his blade into hers, the force was just too much as she was already unstable as she collapsed. This time he did not stop, he threw his blade towards her head. Her eyes went wide, but she felt relief when the blade passed her right ear and embedded on the ground. Before she could move, he appeared and slammed his feet into her guts as she cried out in pain as he reached and picked up his blade behind her. I do not like to show mercy to my opponents, but this is not the dance of death. Do you mind waving the white flag? She suppressed the urge to frown. She hasn't done much, nothing to really weaken him. She gritted her teeth. This hadn't been a battle she couldn't give up yet, not when she hadn't given everything. I refuse, she said, as she grabbed onto his feet. that was in her stomach and released lightning from her hands. The moment the lightning started to course through his body, he made the distance. She smirked as that was what she wanted. She got to her feet and launched herself towards him. It took her a couple of seconds to reach him head on, as she twisted and threw her feet towards his face, but he tilted backwards. She did not stop as she twisted her body and brought her heel around to slam it inside his head. As her foot neared him, he simply ducked under the kick as he avoided completely. Before she could make another move, Naruto had moved faster than her while in his crouch position. He grabbed her left leg and lifted her slightly before bringing her down with so much force. Her body cratered the earth. He did not stop there as he picked her up as he twisted her in mid-air a couple of times before he sent her crashing as she slammed face first in the arena wall with a loud boom. Her body slid off the wall and slid down the ground. The proctor flash in the arena someway wasn't out cold, but it was best that he ended it, as if he did not, perhaps she would not survive. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki, as the proctor glanced at Naruto, who barely even seemed winded. The crowd had been a little bit subdued. After all, that was their first fighting in there, their Kumo ninja who was so humiliated. It was rather unfair, seeing that they weren't going to take a break for the next match, but he could live with it. The next match, Yujito versus Naruto Uzumaki. A confident Yujito stepped in the arena as her home crowd cheered for her, as Naruto stood there calm as ever, as he was looking up into the sky, not really paying her any attention. As she glanced at him, his eyes still focused on the sky. "Are the both of you ready?" the proctor asked, as Naruto looked down and nodded, with a small smile on his face. "Begin," the proctor said. Yujito wasted no time, not even speaking her speed. She pushed it. She was upon him in a second. Her right foot was already cleaving through the air, going straight towards his temple, as Naruto brought up his arm, as her kick slammed into it, forcing to slide sideways. She wasted no time as she twisted clockwise, jumping back towards him. Now above him, her right foot coming down towards his head with a dropping kick, as Naruto blocked it. The ground underneath his foot seemed to tremble a bit at the force that she brought down. She leaped back as she landed. As Naruto looked towards his hand, it hurt. She packed more power than he thought. Seeing that all of her attempts had been blocked, she came towards him once again. But she was put to an immediate stop as Naruto swung his foot through the air. She brought her arms in front of her to block his kick. Despite her defense holding firm, she was pushed back by the force of his kick. She looked up as the crowd cheered. Well, that was an interesting beginning to the start of the match, as she jumped back away from him. "You have this habit of observing your opponents, even if you make a critical hit," she said, as she narrowed her eyes towards him. "I've been watching you barely make a follow-up move. Most of the time you stand there, and you simply defend." He looked at her, hearing all the cheers up there. This was a spotlight that he wanted. This was a place he was going to make himself known. "I prefer not to waste unnecessary move," said Naruto. "Just to observe my opponents. It becomes easy to break them apart and I know how they move. Everyone always hides something in battle. Don't think you can observe everything from your opponent." "Wouldn't you say that the same for me?" said Naruto. "I mostly defend and hardly show my skills." "Can you tell if you know anything about me so far?" said Naruto. She blinked. The thought hadn't come to mind, but he was right. She didn't know his proper fighting style. She didn't know what kind of jutsus he had, because he did not show off anything. Nothing at all. It was time that she made him push harder as she shot forward. But before she reached him, she blurred out of sight as she appeared behind him, her right foot swinging through the air, as Naruto simply dropped towards the ground, avoiding the kick. The moment he dropped, he spun around on the ground. "Lightning release, thunderbolt," said Yujito, as Naruto sunshine out of the way. When he appeared, he frowned as bits of lightning had caught him. It did not damage him though. The problem was, he couldn't move. Yujito flashed in front of him, her nails extended at a ridiculous rate as she slashed into his chest. She didn't stop there, she twisted while jumping above the ground, releasing a massive, powerful kick into his forehead. The kick was brutal as it picked him up off the ground. But before he could be sent flying, she grabbed his right foot and slammed him down into the ground. She did it more brutally than what he did to Samoe in the previous match. She did the same thing as she picked him up and swung him, as she released him as he crashed into the wall with a loud boom. She did not waste time as she shot forward, The moment she reached him, she cocked her fist back and slammed it. But Naruto simply tilted his head as her fist smashed into the wall. As he slowly opened his eyes, she saw them. His eyes were cold, and he seemed very displeased. Before she could do anything, he grabbed the hand that she tried to punch him with, and picked himself up rather quickly. I really dislike taking hits. The moment he said that, chains burst out and wrapped around her body. She knew what was going to come next, and she wasn't going to allow it. As far as she was concerned, this was his finishing move, and this meant death. She quickly released powerful bolts of lightning out of her body. The lightning traveled through the chains before literally shocking Naruto. But he did not cry out, but he grit his teeth. The chains dispersed, allowing her to get free. The crowd roared in excitement. Do you want to give up, she said, that smirk, or should we continue? As Naruto looked at his hands, not even looking at her. I guess this happened when you focus on defending, rather than attacking. I didn't expect you to counter my chains in this way, but I should have. I guess this is because of lack of experience. But I shall continue my brutality now. Yujito moved away from him. Something in his tone that made her spine tremble. Up in the Kage's boot. Your son isn't as impressive as I thought you'd be, Ace said the frown. Something was wrong because Minato was smiling a minute ago even when Naruto was putting defenses. But now that Yujito moved back away from Naruto, Minato seemed worried. Why was he worried about Yujito? Or was he finally understanding that his son was gonna lose? I do not agree with that, said Oniki. The man looked quite angry. He hasn't been fighting since the whole tournament. In the first round, he brutalized his opponent, and in the second round, he merely played defenses. I have been a shinobi far too long to be deceived that easily. What are you saying? Asked A. That hardly matters now, said Minato. Be ready to stop the match at any moment, said Minato. Yujito had come close to hurting him, and he is gonna get a bit vengeful, and Minato saw it in Naruto's eyes. Back in the fight, as Naruto walked, he simply walked, he did not run or jog, he walked, going through hand sign before releasing a fire jutsu. The flames were large and intense. Yujito flashed towards the left to avoid the flames. As she felt them from here, if those had touched her, she would have been dead. So he could use fire-based jutsu at this level. That was rather surprising. She looked back to where he was. Her eyes widened as she felt a cold breath on her neck. She twisted as her face was grabbed by Naruto as he lifted her up slightly before slamming her into the ground. She winced in pain as she felt the crash, but she was relieved that it was no cracking sound. She watched him come down and she kicked out, but she moved. But before she could go anywhere, a chain grabbed her leg. She was twisted before she was bashed in the ground brutally. She cried out in pain as her leg started to burn. The chain had crimson flames on it as Naruto lifted her and threw her straight up in the air. The chain then wrapped her in his right foot as he jumped, twisted to gain some momentum. As gravity started to pull her down, he slammed his right foot in her chest. There was a sickening sound of bones breaking as a kick connected with her chest. Much more sickening was how she crashed into the wall, breaking into it. Yet remarkable, she wasn't out cold. She was breathing hard. Blood was leaking from her mouth. But she was still going on because she called the power of the Biju. She called it the power of the Biju inside of her. Even though it was not visible, Naruto felt it as he frowned. The chakra would heal her wounds and gave her a major power boost. That was something he was looking forward to. She straightened herself up as she spat blood from her mouth. She flashed away as she appeared in front of him. In a second, she spun. Her kick slammed into his defense. Despite not doing any much damage to his body, it still lifted him up and threw him backwards. To avoid hitting the wall, he flipped as he landed right on the wall, sticking to a chakra. As Yujito wasted no time, Nezumi Kidama. As he looked up, he saw multiple dark blue objects flying towards him. He pushed chakra in his knees and formed a protective barrier on himself. As he blew off the wall, blowing it as he did, two mouse balls crashed in the chains that he put around himself before they exploded. As the explosion occurred, Naruto was forced to land on the ground before jumping in the air once again. The mouse balls followed him into the air. As he flipped with his chains spinning around him, he pulled out 6 kunais and threw them. The chains around him spin like a fan as they burst into flames. A small tornado of flames formed around him, creating a powerful barrier of flames. The mouse balls crashed into it as they mixed with the red flames. They are blue. As they dispersed, Naruto landed right on the ground. Yujito flashed in front of him, her hand covered in blue chakra. She held her hand together and slammed them right towards his skull. His chain spat up above him, creating a quick defense above his head. The ground shattered as her fist contacted with the chains. As Naruto's knees did not bend though, he pushed back forcefully, forcing her to jump away from him. As he wasted no time and sped towards her, when he was close he jumped in the air and extended his chains. As Yujito blurred out of sight as the chains obliterated the ground where she once stood. As she flashed back in front of him the moment he turned, her entire body covered in blue chakra. Her right fist was moving in blinding speeds as it smashed into his face. The punch was so powerful his body moved so fast, it was like a bullet as he crashed into the arena wall. There was a loud boom as he crashed into the wall. She wasted no time even though he was covered in debris and dust as she launched herself towards him. But the moment she was close enough, his eyes snapped open as he grabbed her face. He twisted and slammed her into the wall that he was just slammed into. Chakra chains pierced through the wall behind her, blocking her escape as Naruto crashed his knee into her gut. She cried out in pain as she spat saliva from her mouth. But Naruto wasn't done, as he followed it up with a fist right towards her chest. She bit her lip as she felt that snap in her chest. He broke a bone of her ribcage. If she did not get out of this trap, she was going to come out of it in a good condition. She might even die. As Naruto drove his fist once again, boom! The wall behind her exploded as no one heard the other snapping sound. As she coughed up blood as she lay there in the debris and dust. She quickly released blue flames from her mouth, crashing them into Naruto. She used the momentum to escape, getting away from the blonde, as she appeared on her knees, breathing heavily, as she watches the flames die down. As Naruto turned, frowning, his clothes was burned. He then went through hand signs. She looked down as she saw the ground. It was glowing with marks all over. The kunais that he threw earlier, they were the one letting off the marks. He then disappeared in a flash of red, but it was a burst of flames, red flames after he vanished. As he appeared behind her, it seems the extra chakra is giving you advantage. I really shouldn't be fighting a Jinchuriki, but it is alright, he said calmly. I will request the kunai I gave you when I come for my date. It was purely out of instinct as she was able to dodge a chain that burst out of the ground. If she had not dodged, it would have pierced through her chin, going straight up. The moment she landed, Naruto was already beside her. Two chains burst from the ground, piercing through her foot. She cried out in pain as they went through her bone like it was absolutely nothing. As Naruto slammed his foot around her knee, a loud snap echoed around the arena as he broke her leg. A cry of pain as she dropped. As Naruto pulled out his blade that burst with crimson flames on it. The proctor flashed in the ring as he stopped the match. Yujito is unable to continue. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki, he said. And that is where it started. Naruto thought to himself. Everyone was able to see what he was capable of today. Able to see and hear the name, Naruto Uzumaki. Time skip. Hana never thought that she would be on a mission with the Naruto. She felt excited. Naruto was a shinobi that was known all over the Elemental Nation. It wasn't because his father was Hokage. It was because he was a powerful shinobi that has accomplished so much already. Most of all, he was also a good-looking man. It was made more pleasant because he carried himself so well, and he was generally liked. He did treat people who smiled at him with kindness after all. People treat him with kindness because it was well known that he was not fond of anyone that didn't like him. Hell, his enemies over the years have been treating him with some cruelty, to make people wonder if he was a good person or not. The few times that she saw him, he was conversing with Kurenai, her uncle, and he seemed to be a rather pleasant person. She steeled herself as he came closer. She tried to hush her partner, who was growling as the Uzumaki came close to her. Her partner was usually well-mannered, so it was strange for him to be so angry towards someone at first glance. The redhead didn't look like a dangerous person either. Arriving in the village gates, Naruto smiled at the woman that was waiting for him. He kept his eyes closed as he spoke. You must be the person accompanying me on this emergency, he said. Hana nodded as her partner barked and growled at the redhead, looking like he was about to jump on him. She patted the dog to calm him down, but he did not stop it. It was almost like the dog was barking at the enemy, who was to be torn apart. She smiled nervously at Naruto. Sorry, he isn't usually like this. It would have been embarrassing if there was a lot of people around. At least it was just the gate guards. It is fine, said Naruto as he kneeled down. He slowly opened his eyes. The dog looked at him as his tails went between its legs as it closed its mouth. See, said Naruto. Hana felt fear in her partner. What had Naruto done? Was he such a scary person that he could make? The dog felt fear with a single look. We should head out, said Naruto, son a bit hurried. I didn't introduce myself. Uzumaki Naruto said, hold out his right hand. As she reached and took his hand, Hana, Inuzaka, she said, his hand was bandaged. As Naruto smiled, first time, I'm being accompanied by such a pleasant person on a mission. I hope to get to know more of you, after the mission of course. I have a strict policy of conducting business before pleasure. Hana didn't know how to respond to him as they went through the gates. From what she knew, he didn't do teams. In fact, since he became Chunin, he has only done solo missions and partner with just a couple of people, mostly Itachi and Kakashi. There was a rumor that those that did missions with him when he was a Chunin never wanted to do it ever again. Details were never dished out, but whatever it was, Uncle seemed to like it. And anything that was liked by the woman wasn't something tasty. Hana hoped it wasn't something bad. What is the mission about, she asked as she caught up to him. He pulled out a cloth and handed it to her. I asked for a sensor to track this person. He stole some information from Konoha. He's suspected to be a spy of the Hidden Stone. We have to chase after him, either eliminate or drag him back to the village. Hana wondered why this mission was not rushed if they were going to chase after a person. They shouldn't even have wasted time at the gate. The envoy that came to find her said it was an emergency. She had made her way there as quick as possible at the gate. But yet he wasted time talking. He seemed so calm about it though, even though he was in a slight rush. She sniffed the cloth as she allowed her partner to sniff it as well. They were on the right direction. The scent was passing around here. Lead the way if you have the scent, said Naruto. I was told you were the fastest. The Inuzakas could offer at short notice. In any case, I advise that you run as fast as you can. You can use chocolate to increase your speed if you like. If you're tired, I will carry you, he said with a smile. I will do my best, she said. How strong is the target, she asked. Chunin at best, said Naruto. We're likely to encounter enemy shinobis though. Shouldn't I preserve my chakra just in case then, she asked. If he was telling her to use chakra to increase her speed, it would make her a liability in battle. If she exhausted herself now with all the running, she didn't want to be a burden. Her mother asked her to make a strong impression. He shook his head. There's no need, he said. Your mission is to point the enemy for me, and I will do the elimination. As he paused, shall we increase the pace, he asked. Hana wondered why he said elimination after all. They were supposed to drag him back. Elimination if they could not, or he was putting up too much of a hassle. But he went straight for elimination. They ran for a couple of hours and she started to get worn out. But because Naruto didn't look winded at all, she pushed herself to her limits. She felt relief as the scent grew stronger. The enemy was closer. She tried telling him, but no word came out of her mouth. She was seriously winded. The redhead motioned for her to stop. The weariness hit her as she dropped, hands on her knees. It took her a few seconds to recover enough breath to talk. Target ahead. Just move straight. I see, said Naruto. She let out a small yeep as Naruto picked her bridal style. What are you doing, she asked. He tilted his head to the side like her question confused him for some reason. You're tired, and I can't leave you behind, he said. Stopping for you to regain your breath means we allow the enemy to get away. He said it like it was obvious. Don't worry, I don't mind, he said. For the first time she saw those crystal blue eyes of his. Then they vanished. She didn't feel anything as he sped, her partner lagging behind him. The breeze hitting her body, she didn't even feel like she was being carried. It just felt like she was stuck still because he was that fast. As he leaped up on a tree and set her down gently. As she frowned, it was better being held by him. As Naruto pointed distance away as Hana looked, she saw a young man wearing civilian clothing leaning against a trunk. He was breathing heavily as he held a scroll close to his chest, like it was for his life. Hana felt sorry for him. He was a spy, yes. Even if he was getting back to his village, they would quietly get him killed, know that he was known by Konoha. Being a spy was a dangerous business. Why aren't you going after him, she asked. I do not know if there's traps around him, said Naruto. Besides, he's likely taking information to someone. If I go after him now, I don't know who or where. That will be a problem to let him talk as well. Spies had rather strong wills, and they didn't break down with extreme pain. Oh, said Hana. So we're gonna follow him, she said. But doesn't that make things rather troubling? If we allow him to meet who he's gonna meet, that increased difficulty of the mission. It is risky, especially when we don't know what we're gonna meet at the other side. Do not concern yourself with difficulty, said Naruto. I have accounted for that. Just rest, and we will move when the target move. Hana nodded as she rested her body. Who was she to try to talk him to change his mind? He was the one that was known to eliminate numbers. But that was putting it nicely. The redhead was known for slaughters and massacres. When it came off dealing with groups or enemies, Konoha always sent him, and he always won. He wasn't a one-man army, but he was a demolisher of any armies. One thing stood out, he was brutal in battle. But Hannah never really believed it. He seemed like a good person, not the sadistic one that people paint him to be. No one out of his circle knew how strong he was because anyone that saw him go all out never lived to tell. They were just a bunch of things people said about him. Some of them were just ridiculous. Well, she will see the truth today with her own eyes. We're moving, said Naruto, as the target started to move again. The pace was not fast, and they were keeping a distance. They tailed the target until they reached the borders of the Earth Country. A dangerous place for any Konoha shinobi. Stone shinobis were not fond of them and they attacked without saying a single word. There's a group of shinobi up ahead, said Naruto. I would rather you stay here and close your eyes. As he removed the sword that was on his back. Hannah was curious about that. What was it? He didn't want her to see. But he wasn't joking, as he blurred away. But she wanted to see as she crawled up. Meanwhile, Naruto appeared behind the target. Hello, he said. The man jumped away in fear. He didn't feel anyone. As he turned to face the enemy, he grit his teeth in rage as he came face to face with a smile of a monster. Of all the shinobis to pursue him, it had to be this demon. Well, it had been planned, but still he was fearing the encounter and worrying about the possibilities of things going to hell. Of all the shinobis, I never thought I'd be pursued by you, monster. Naruto tilted his head. I'm sensing some malice. Well, it doesn't matter, he said, as he blurred out of sight. As Naruto appeared in front of him, he moved so fast his spy did not have time to react. As Naruto grabbed the man by his face and lifted him up in the air, the grip was so tight the man felt like his face was being held by an iron claw. As Naruto swung his blade, it happened so fast his spy didn't feel anything until his hand hit the ground that was holding on to the important scroll. This is the thing about spies, you're never strong enough. As he flicked his blade, flipping away the blood, as he sheathed his blade. Water prison, said Naruto as he trapped the spy in a water prison. Water that came from his palm. Tell me, who are you gonna meet? The spy smiled. You're in the Earth Country, and given your past actions, you're not the most favorite person here. You won't leave this place alive. The first wave is led by Kurosaki, the third Tishikage granddaughter. You'll find out the second wave eventually. As Naruto tilted his head. What's that supposed to mean, he said. You're the fastest behind the fourth Hokage, so we knew that Konoha would send you. We waited until you arrived. I see. So I fall into a trap, said Naruto. I was feeling a bit merciful today, but since you went out of your way to plot this, I shall reward you. What do you think will happen if I was to boil this water to the point it becomes acid to melt your skin? How long do you think you can live? I'm curious. Shall we test it? The moment he said that, he started to pour fire chakra into the water. As steam started to come from the water. You cold-hearted monster, the spy shouted. The next thing that came out of his mouth was a cry of pain as water inside his body started to boil as well. It didn't take too long for his eyes to burst out as the water turned red. As Naruto canceled the jutsu and looked up. The moment he took a step forward, he was surrounded by a group of shinobis. Well. Kurosaki was standing at a treetop, looking on at him, her man, surrounding Naruto. What do we have here? You have Uzumaki, Naruto, said Naruto looking down. You must be Kurosaki. My first time meeting a third Tishikage granddaughter in battle. Are you gonna entertain me, girl? As he lifted his head towards her, but his eyes were closed. I'm not here for your entertainment, I'm here for your elimination. As she waved her hand as her man pushed the attack. 20 shinobis flashed towards him as he unsheathed his blade. Another unfair battle he was forced to deal with. What was wrong with these people, always ganging up on him to gain the upper hand? It hasn't worked before, but that didn't mean it didn't bother him. Before they could come at him fully, he jumped and twisted. Multiple kunais were thrown from him quickly. All of them were able to dodge. But that wasn't what he wanted after all. As Naruto started to go through hand sign, one of the shinobis quickly released a jutsu, Earth style, Earth Spikes. As Earth Spikes burst forward, one of them was right beneath him, charging towards him to pierce through him. As Naruto summoned 6 chakra chains that obliterated the spikes. As debris picked up as Naruto landed, he then disappeared in a red flash. He then appeared behind enemy lines. It all happened so fast, no one saw it coming. His chains ripped through 6 enemy shinobi from behind. The chains were covered by flames. Before he could do anything, 2 shinobis flashed behind him, one of them yelling, "Don't underestimate us!" The one who yelled jump as spin around, bringing that axe kick towards Naruto's skull. The other one slammed his hand down as Earth hands burst and grabbed Naruto's feet from the ground. Naruto raised the right hand using his sword as a shield. The kick crashed into the side of his blade as Naruto was still fast into the ground by the things on his legs. Two more flashed beside him, one to aim a punch towards his forehead, the other one on his left. As Naruto raised his left hand and formed two more chains that created a barrier. As the other one swings his kunai and managed to cut through the bandage on Naruto's hand. As Naruto looked down at it, he raised a single hand sign. Death, he said. As the flames on his chains incinerate his targets and nothingness. As he got surrounded once again. As Naruto sighed, 120 seconds, he said, like a robot as he looked up. He then vanished as the slaughter began. As a woman appeared with a Kodokai as Naruto flashed in front of her. She tried to block it, but Naruto's sword sliced right through her blades, cutting across her chest as he drive a kunai in her throat as she collapsed. Before he could move, a shinobi flashed above him holding a kunai as Naruto twists and severed the man's arms before slicing the man's neck. Was sliced open as his body dropped to the ground. Another one came from underneath him, with two coming toward his side as Naruto flipped doubling back before smashing his heel on the head of the one underneath the ground. Flipping over the other two, he was up in mid-air before he turned and sliced. Dropping, their bodies also drop as well. Chains came from his back and rooted the shinobi out of the ground, slamming that person into two other that pierced through them, the chains, incinerating their insides as they turned into mush before turning into dust. As Naruto placed a hand on the ground, "Chain feel," he said. Cries of pain and agony could be heard as Kurosaki eyes were wide. All around Naruto, hundreds of chakra spears came out, reducing the battlefield, reducing the numbers of shinobis that came to attack him. There was no space for one to escape because the spears covered the entire field around him. Some of our shinobis were torn apart because the chains had ripped through their bodies. There was only one person left on his knees, panting slightly. Everyone else was dead. As Naruto walked forward towards her, there was no blood on him except for the gash that he received earlier from that guy. As the chains clear apart for him, the rest of the chains incinerating everything around, burning all the body parts that remained. As he walked out to the executioner ground, as he was just walking towards her, the fire surrounding him. For the first time she saw his eyes. They were cold. The expression on his face was indifferent. He apparently didn't care what was going on around him, it seems. "I have done enough killing for one day," he said, looking up at her. "Besides, killing you would just cause trouble." She felt something. It was fear. He looked like a peaceful person before, but now she was seeing what he truly was. She could barely feel his bloodlust. That was what frightened her, and her body shook with utter fear. "Well, I could simply cut off your legs and incinerate them. That would drown you." He paused before he flashed away. A few moments later, the stone Black Ops flashed into the area. "Got away," said Kurosaki. "Let us not pursue." Although she would not show it, she was glad that he had run away. She was glad, as she could breathe normally now. "Are you sure?" the man asked. "Yes, we have lost something, but we have also gained something as well. I've come to understand that lonesome ability of his," she said. Meanwhile, with Hana, that scene made her understand. It made her understand a bit better about why the reason people fear him so much. As she felt sick at that scene that she just saw. It was so gruesome. Well, no one ever said that Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a monster on the battlefield. But guys, be instantly right here. If you want things part to do, like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn the bell notifications to stay posted. But I'm off for now. See you guys soon. Peace.